So let's start with the roof design essentials. So how do you get started? What are the most important things to consider? How do you get started on this project, for instance?
So now to clear this up, I just removed this roof, and now we can see that the roof is removed from the 3D. It's of course removed from the 2D as well. Let me just focus to this part here. And this is where I will start. Now, most of the time, or in many situations, you won't work on angled drawings like this. You will work on perpendicular and horizontal vertical drawings many times. But if it happens, it's actually nothing difficult. You just go and use the roof tool, and either you use the roof shapes. These are predefined tools to easily create a flat roof or an open gable or something else. I just go with this, and in that case, you can just align your drawing to the current content, and then you just
the predefined shape automatically appears.
Yes, and as you can see, the software will tell you how the roof plane will build up. And once I click now, the software will automatically create a roof with the default settings. Now, there is one thing here, and that's what we see, that the roof is not really in connection with the 3D structure. Right. We will cover this a little bit later. So this is what you will see when you create the roof itself. Now let me just go back and remove this roof, because this is happening when you work on really simple roofs. But if you have some complex shape, like something which is non-symmetrical, or it has some specific features, or an L shape or something like this, like in this case, you can go and use the roof tool, and there is something called the auto roof. Now the auto roof comes with the default behavior where you can actually select currently created walls, and the software will automatically recognize the outer contour of those walls, and it will auto draft a roof on that. That's why we call it an auto roof.
So what do? You go ahead and select the walls one by
I can
one.
Either select them, or if I just would like to draft it on my own, because for any reason I just would like to pick the points by myself, I will go with this polygon option here, and then I just click on usually on the outer contour, but this really only determines where the roof planes are attached and how the roof is drafted. It's not that much important to be on the external side. Usually it's the external side. So now I have an automatic roof. As you can see, it's already existing in the 2D. I have a preview in the 3D, but it's not existing in the 3D yet. Yes. It will once I hit OK, and then the roof is created here in
with the default settings,
space,
right?
With the default settings. Now, what can I change here? There are quite a lot of things that I can do here. Now, first things first, if I go back to change the settings, I can set up the position of the roof. Like, for example, I can tell where the wall height is, what I can see from inside. This is value F. I can say where the bottom part of the roof is. That's value C. As you can see, when you click on any of those, you can determine that value. And the reason why the rest is grayed out is because once you determine this, it determines all the rest. So you only need
everything
to know
else
one of those.
is sort of updating automatically.
Yes. So the software, based on the settings that you already have, is automatically recalculating the 3D shape and the 3D position of the roof based on the contour that you have created and based on the angles, which I will cover soon. So this is how you can build it up. Of course, when you work with these roof shapes, let me just go back to the default, you can also set up something what we call a style. The software comes with built-in styles, not only in case of the roofs, but in case of the walls, slabs, and all the rest of the building parts. Styles are actually names which you can use to store all the content, all the settings that, like in case of a roof, the settings of the thickness, the material,
other properties, it could be anything.
And everything, yeah, and even of course the beam parameters.
Now, one thing with styles, that's something that we always talk about, is that these are not tied to this project, or they can be. So if you want to tie this style to this project, yeah, you can do it. So in case you send this project to another colleague of yours who uses ARCHLine, they can access the same styles. But you can make this into a global style, for instance, when you can carry on with you, even if you change to another computer, you can always carry your styles with you.
Just as you mentioned, styles can be exported and imported. So working in we are working together on a project in 2 separate offices. I just created a good roof style that I think will be fine with the design. I just export. I don't have to send the whole project. Of course, I can do that, but I can just export that one single file, only the content of this roof. Send it to you. You can import it, and then you can use the same settings, and this makes life a lot easier.
That's right.
When we work with those same settings.
So what's the next step?
So let's talk about, so this is how you can store the settings. Now I will just quickly show you what comes by default with the software. Now there is one roof setting which is called the simple roof. If I double click on it, this means I'm activating it, and I update. This is what you can see. This is the simple roof shape that the software is shipped with. And you can find something that's called the complex roof with tiling layer only. So if you double click on that and update, you will see something which is having a lot more detail in it. But going back to our default roof shape, which we will start with today, and I'm closing the styles now. I can show you how the roof structure itself builds up. So you will see that there are pages here. Now with these settings grayed out, those are the eaves purlin, the rafter, and whenever I click and enable any of those options, I will be able to click on the page itself and set up the eaves purlin, set up the rafter, set up the middle purlin, or any other settings that I'm about to set here. I can go and click on the page and set up the cross section or the you know, the layout of the rafters, or
how they are represented
the material
in 2D.
Yeah. And what's important here, that as you can see, that for example, talking about the rafters, if I set up a rectangular profile, I can set up the beam gap, the distances between the beams. There is always a description here, like a detailed drawing explaining what value is for what sort of reason. And you can also change the endings, and you can also set up frames, like you can set up a main frame and you can set up a subframe and so on. So you can, this way you can set up quite a complex structure. Not only for wooden roof structures, this is for the default settings are for wooden structure, but you can also use them for glass roofs or steel structure or something like that.
Or if you just want to have a flat roof, the structure would be the same, right? So you can use the same elements to...
Many times, yes. So it really depends on what you are about to achieve. If it's having a frame system, you will use the frame system. Either it's called rafter or something else. If it's in the same direction, you will use the same setting. I did not mention that the material that we see here is actually also on the front page, the general properties. You can set up what's on the side and what's on the bottom. And also when we talk about the roof styles, now this we will cover later in detail in the following session, but now it's enough just to talk about that. Like there is a simple roof setting when the software is not literally generating the tiles themselves, because you know that's a lot of surfaces, but sometimes it's necessary, so you can enable that. But by default the software is only applying a texture, nice texture, like as we can see here now. So it's not in 3D, the software is not calculating the amount of tiles, only the surfaces, but it's good enough for, like at least for the conceptual
for representation,
visuals,
that's right.
Yeah. And if I would like to go further in detail, then I can do that, and I can just enable all the rest of the options. And those materials are something that you can set here. And also, just as we covered in previous sessions, you can bring in new materials, new textures, and if you find a nice photograph or a new texture file online of the roof, should it be like a sheet, like a metal sheet or something like that, you can use that as well.
Yes.
So going back to the rafter settings. So see, now I already set up the eaves purlin, the rafter, or the ridge board. At least I enabled them. So if I click on update, I expect them to be visible.
Yes, but they are not. So what
not.
gives?
So, well, this is for a setting, because you know in the design sometimes you would like to set up these items, but it's a matter of decision whether you would like to really see them and intersect them or document them or not. And that's some setting that you can set up on the main page in the general properties. So if there is only the roof layers visible in 3D,
yes, then the structural elements won't be visible.
Yes. So what I need to set up is that I need to enable roof rafters updates. Now they are visible. And as you can see, now there are roof layers in the 3D, but not the detailed layers. There is another setting here. So if I enable this, then I will get a different result.
I see. So we started from a simplified view, and now we are going more towards the...
Simply just enabling additional details.
But here's the thing, when the view is simplified, the structural elements are still there, right?
Yes.
They are just hidden. So it's not that it...
Yes, so the difference here is that you can enable and disable the visibility of these items without destructing the structure that you already created. So you don't have to erase these items, you just disable the visibility, and that's it. So I just enabled this, and see, now there is an interesting thing here. I enabled to have layers, but I only see one single layer and none of the others. And the reason to that is that if I go to the layers and geometry, and that's it here, I can see that, well, actually there are two layers here. One of them called roof tile, the other has no name, only materials and the thickness. And the reason it's not visible, that it's because it's created like a non-visible. This last option is making it visible in 3D or not. So, for example, this is only cavity or something like that. In that case, you just simply disable the visibility of that layer. You can build up a visible layer, an invisible layer, an invisible layer. So you can build up a real structure like it is in some case in case of the roof structure as well. So this way you can set up how the layers are, how the structure is created. And there is one more thing that is necessary to be able to set up a proper roof structure, and by default it is there. You don't have to tweak it, but in any case you need, you can. And that's how the bottom of the rafter is aligned with the bottom of the layer, which is indexed here.
So you can like offset the distance between.
So now this setting is actually telling me that the bottom of the second layer, which is invisible,
which is the air cavity,
is aligned to the bottom of the rafter, which is now correct because this way I have a proper representation. But whenever I need to change this, I think we will go a little bit deeper in the next session about how this works. Then I can obviously do that. So I can set up the layers, I can set up the structure. I can make them visible, or I can turn them off. I can set all these things into the styles, or I can just go with the default styles and worry about the settings later. And at the end, what's also important is how the roof is in connection with the world, actually with the walls.
Yes, actually we are going to touch upon this in detail, but we started this discussion by highlighting that now the walls are like reaching over the roof. So this is where you can actually set up where the roof actually cuts the walls, right?
Yes, and now the default setting here in this case is that the roof should cut everything on its own floor. That means if the roof was drafted on a level where the walls were created, then once the walls start and reach the bottom of the roof, it will automatically cut it. But if that wall is coming from another floor, like from very much below, like from the garage or something like that, it can be really tall, but it will just pass through the roof because it's not coming from the same floor. So if I would like to just simply keep it simple and say that, okay, whatever meets the roof, it should be cut by the roof, I just use this option, the all roof option, and then I click OK, and then the software should cut the roofs, the walls, but it's not happening. And there is another reason to that.
Yes.
By default, the software is trying to keeping the project as up to date as possible. But there are some things that could take a few seconds or something like that. So the software is not stopping you. It's just doing the changes, and whenever you want, you can just click on the 3D hammer here, this quick 3D model. You just click here, and then you update the model with the current settings, and then the miracle happens when the walls are cut by the roof, because now the software is considering all connections between the structure, and once it's done, as you can see, it's disappearing now.
That's right. So this way you have a direct command on when you want to update the 3D model, and that conserves some processing power from your computer.
Yeah, and remember we talked about the 3D representation and the 2D representation. There is another thing that we should consider, and this is how the roof looks like now in 2D, and whether we like it or not. And that's something that we can, again, control in case of the roof. We can go into the roof settings, like here. And then in the roof settings dialog, you can see something, it's called the show beams 2D representation. And if I disable that, I can just hit OK. And now the software represents the roof simple in 2D, but complex in 3D.
It's not lost, you just disable the visibility.
Just as in case of the other things. So instead of just switching off all the elements, there is one main switch, and that's called the 2D visibility of the beams. Actually, the software is calling everything beam inside the roof, which is like a rafter,
a structural element.
A structural element. So if you disable that, you will still see it happening in the 3D, but you won't see the content appearing in 3D. Sorry, in 2D. There is another thing that I think it's a good thing to know about. If I disable this setting here, and I update the content, I can visualize the structure only, which is also something interesting when you would like to represent the building like in detail, or you would like to make an interesting render, or like an axiometric drawing about this. This could be very useful. Now, talking about these items here, we will cover these a little bit more detailed, but let me just give you at least one glimpse of how you can tweak the roof structure, how it works. And it happens here. Like, for example, now I have this, which is called the ridge board. Now, this ridge board is set to support the rafters instead of being in between the rafters. Some countries use this, some countries use that. Some structure is for this, and the others are for that. So you can use it. You can set up the settings in the ridge board setting, and you can go there. And as you can see, there is a value B here.
Yes.
And this determines the position of this ridge board, whether it's a ridge board or something else in between the items here. So once I change this here, let me just change it to 0.16, for example, and update. See, now it's coming up.
And don't forget that every time you do something like that, you can save this into another style.
Yes.
So if in your country it works differently, then you can just set it up and save it accordingly.
Yes, yes. Stylized roof workflow is I think, quite handy and useful once you work at least 2 or 3 different roof types. So now once we have this, let's just go back and cover it up a little bit. So we talked about the general properties, structure, layers, cutting of the other parts,
right.
and also the projections, how it's the layers and the projection with the walls are combined together. There's one thing that I did not cover, which is the pitch and shape. And for that reason, I think I will just go back to the simple representation of this roof. Let me just enable this and disable this and this. Update. So now I have this simple roof representation. And then let's talk about how the roof pitch setting works. Now that's here in the pitch and shape. And as you can see, the roof 2D here is aligned the same way as it is in the original drawing. So this helps you
floor plan,
finding the proper orientation, how it's set up. So how can I change that? If I click on any of those roof planes, I can see their pitch and whether they are hipped or gable end or something like that. So if I, for example, if I would like to make this roof plane disappear like an open end, I should click on it and say that this is a gable end. Update, and then now this is what happens here. Let's just do the same thing with this here. Again, I just click here and I say, okay, this should be a gable end. Update. And now this is what I see. Let's click OK.
It's taking shape one roof plane at a time.
Yeah, so this is how you can do that. But of course, if you would like to change the overall pitch of the full roof, because it's like a taller roof or something like that, high-pitched roof, then you just go to the settings, again, go and find the pitch and shape, select any of those roof shapes that you can select, and there's an important thing here. You can actually select a roof plane which is not visible as well. See, I have disabled this roof plane, but it's still there. The plane count is still 6. There
also, you can navigate
1, 2,
back
3,
to the
4,
place.
5, and 6. They are still there. So in that case, if I would like to go back and, I don't know, for any reason, I would like to turn this back to hip, I can just do like that and it will go back. So disabling this, update, and then going back to the original topic. So how to change the pitch of all the planes? I can just come here and say that, well, this should be something around like 30 degrees or something, and I apply this for all the planes, update, and then the software will make changes for all the planes which are not disabled. And this way the full roof is changed. I click OK, and then now I have a taller roof. And again, considering this here, there is no updated wall roof connection yet, which is for two reasons. One is that sometimes, like in the other case here, the wall is simply not tall enough. It's only coming up to this side, so I can just click here and say change height, and I don't know, elevate it to something like this, and then it will solve itself.
Yes, because of the automated cutting, so you just need to elevate its height and it cuts.
Yes, that's right. And the other way around, if I'm sure that this is actually something that should happen there, but it's not happening, again, I just click on the 3D update, refreshing the 3D, wait a little while, and then the software will update the changes.
That's right.